This episode is a little bit different from the average episode. All of our episodes are serious, but this one is probably the most serious. This episode is dedicated to all the lives that have been lost now and through the past 400 years. This episode is dedicated to the Black Lives Matter movement. Please take this episode and write down all of the gems and resources and ways to help that are presented in this episode. We also have resources on our social media platforms as well. This movement, as stated in this episode, is not a sprint, it's a marathon. We need your help to show that Black lives truly matter. This episode is dedicated to Trayvon Martin, Tamir Rice, Michael Brown, Eric Gardner, Sandra Bland, Freddie Gray, Alton Sterling, Philando Castile, Doug Lewis, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and so many more lives. Be the change that you want to see in the world. Thank you for your time and enjoy the episode. Should be, and you are now in the place to be. Welcome to the Lituation room. What is good, everyone? It's your girl Leisha B, and you are now in the place to be. Welcome to the Lituation room. And y'all, I am so excited for this episode. This episode was so needed, and I have one of my favorite people on this episode, and I'm gonna let him introduce himself.
Wow. Thank you for having me. My name is Tylik McMillan. I am a policy advisor for Reverend Al Sharpton and National Action Network. I've been working for Reverend Sharpton since I was 13 years old, now 23, so I've been in here for quite some time. I was in it when it wasn't popular, but I'm a recent graduate of North Carolina A&T State University and a member of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. And I'm just a community leader. I love to be there for my people. I'm excited for the liberation of my people, and I'm excited for the revolution of where Black people are about to go in this next dimension. So thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. So first, I want to ask this question. What drew you to want to be in this position? Like, what made you feel like this is something that you needed to do?
Yeah. Like I said, I started off in the beginning. I was a young little boy. Like I said, I started off with Reverend Sharpton when I was 13. Of course, the passion for it was way before that. And so it was days that I was sitting with my grandmother in front of the TV, my great grandmother, watching C-SPAN and House proceedings, and I was being drugged to city council meetings with my other grandparents on my mother's side. So it was always that passion for me to want to make change and to just be in the midst of great leaders that inspired me to one day step up to the plate and be at those same tables for myself, for my people. And like I said, I was doing it when it wasn't popular, because while my friends was out playing football and skating, here I was out in the streets trying to make change at a young age.
And as someone who, like you said, it wasn't popular, and right now it's just getting popular, in my opinion. How was it, growing up having that fire to want to make change and everyone kind of combating you against it?
Yeah. So growing up, I was very fortunate to be raised around sheroes and heroes who always taught me about what justice meant to them and allowed me to really articulate what justice means to me. I was always reminded in the fact that it's not a sprint, but it's a marathon. Justice is not a sprint; it's a marathon. Is understand that it's not for the moment, but it's a movement. So all what you see, it's not just for now in the moment, but this right here is a movement of people to make change.
Exactly. And you kind of touched on it, but what is your idea of justice? Like, if we were in this perfect utopia, how would you think that justice would be executed?
I would see, in this world, I would see Black and brown people just being very successful, being able to have flourishing businesses, being to have the opportunity to have equity, having the opportunity to have space where things and systems aren't in place to try to hold them down and to keep them from prospering. White supremacy would not be a thing, but instead we have Black empowerment. And so that's what I just see for the full liberation of our people to just be great. To be great and to bask in our excellence.
Exactly. Okay. So obviously this episode is coming at a time where there is a lot of hostility, a lot of animosity towards Black and brown people. A lot of the times, especially for me with protesting, one, I'm nervous. I'm gonna be completely honest. I've only done one protest, and that was one of the protests that they had at A&T, and it was a blackout. And I remember feeling really empowered to be there. But now that I don't have that group of people that were all with me at that time, it's a little bit harder for me to want to get out there. And also because I have asthma, I'm scared about them retaliating with certain things and not being able to control that outside environment. So the main thing that I wanted to talk about in this episode specifically is how can people who feel as though they're posting on social media, they may or may not be at these protests. Like, what else can we do? How else can we stay informed and stay organized? So my first question that came from one of my listeners is, how can someone stay organized and get real facts, not the fake news, as our president likes to say, but the real authentic ideas and facts that are coming from?
Yeah, so it's very critical for folks to do their own research. It's very critical for folks to do their own insight. It's very critical for folks to plug in to grassroots organizations in their community, to plug into local, whether that's your church, whether that's, actually going to sit in a city council meeting, or whether that's going to sit in on whether you have a board of supervisors or you're going to talk with your state senator or your state assembly member. Those are where you find and you get more enlightened when you do your own research. I think it's very easy for folks to just go on Instagram or to go on Twitter and to believe the first thing that they see on the timeline. Kid me not, it's a great way to get information. But as individuals and as members and as contributing members of society, it is our duty to do research on our behalf and to look into things and for our own selves, for our own good, and to learn that information. So that's what I would say. Be informative, ask questions, and if you don't know the questions, network with folks who are in those spaces who can help introduce you to those spaces to get comfortable.
And with you stating about talking to local leaders, what are some demands that would you think that would create change if more people started to request for them, or more people started to talk to these leaders about them?
Yeah, I think definitely. Everything I was always taught by Miss Sharon Horde at A&T, God rest her soul. She would always say, local politics is is it. She said, politics may not be the sexiest thing to talk about, but your local politics is what really makes a difference. And so in these meetings, and you're talking about the budget, and you see the funding that police officers and these departments are getting and what they're using the funds for. When we talk about police commission, community police commissions, where community members are actually on the board of police incidents, or we're talking about creating community police commissions, stuff like this, to get engaged, that who your chief of police is, that who your sheriff is. So it should be to where a point that you're so passionate about it, even in the midst of all of this, but after the fact, they should still know your face and they should still know your name.
For a lot of things that I've been seeing on social media, especially from non-African Americans and non-brown people, it's been a lot of seeing the negative side of what's going on right now. A lot of people are being more focused on the looting and the aggressive protesting. Can you explain a little bit from your perspective? Because I don't want to give it as a generalized thing about what Black people feel. But from your side, how do you feel about this looting and this aggressive protesting that's happening?
Yeah, so I think so. Folks say it was supposed to be a protest, not a robbery, and you hear that a lot. But as Mama Sabrina Fulton said, who was a mother of Trayvon Martin, it was supposed to be an arrest, not a murder. And so folks are furious. Folks are upset. And please don't get it confused. Protesters are protesting and looters are looting. So I think there's a difference to understand there. And we can't allow the occupant at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue or whoever or a news outlet to try to sway us from the real reason that folks are out on the streets and protesting, and to sway us away from the reason that we are even in the streets in the first place. And what I think about is I also think about, like, I'll say stealing a Gucci bag and some Prada shoes does not bring George Floyd back. It does not bring Breonna Taylor back. And folks need to make sure. And I quote my sis in the movement at Nan, as she would say, if you out there and you worried about a Gucci purse, you need to ensure that your voter registration card is in that Gucci purse. So we got to be smart. And I'm not here to tell folks how to express their frustration or to express their anger. But me personally, I feel it's not the way. And as said, protesters are protesting and looters are looting.
When I was talking about this with one of my friends, because, I try to educate people who don't get it as much as I can, they were always like, what's the point of looting? And I was like, okay, hear me out. Jesus had a riot in the Bible. So what we're doing is really not that different.
Well, I think that no. For those essentials. I mean, like I said, I'm not a person to tell a person how to express their anger or to express their frustration. But when we look at like resources that are needed on the front line, and we see on social media where officers are deliberately pouring out water for protesters and deliberately throwing away snacks and essentials for protesters. Like the resources are needed. And so I'm not going to say either way, but it's just, those things are needed. And so if they need water, if they need what they need, and if that's how it is.
Right. And speaking of that, what do you think are other ways that people could take a stand but not cause so much destruction to our community?
Yeah. So organization is very critical when protesting and demonstrating. It's very critical for organizers to know that you need water when folks are protesting. It's critical for organizers to know that you need medical supplies. It's critical for folks when organizing to know that you need some form of direction to stay on message for what you're organizing and protesting about. And those who organize protests and organize these demonstrations understand the importance and the need of having these resources. So as we know, there are folks, as you go out on the street, you see folks who are actually donating water and donating supplies. So there's folks out there who are all together in on this fight. So folks are prepared to do their civil disobedience.
On the day that we're recording this, it is Tuesday, June 2nd, which is the Blackout day that social media and the music industry has taken. Before starting this episode, I was looking on Twitter and seeing a lot of people going back and forth on the idea of the Blackout day. A lot of people are like, what's the point of posting all these blackout photos? Mm-hmm. Or the whole idea was to support Black businesses. Do you think that sometimes when good things happen, they can get the premise of what happens can get misconstrued?
I think, yeah. I mean, it definitely can get mixed in, and people throw in their own little flair of what they believe it is. But I believe as long as the message is still what the message is supposed to be about, then it's successful. I think when folks blacking out their posts and also like tagging like Black Lives Matter, and then we look on our Instagram feeds and that's all we see is black. I like we don't want to dilute and take away from the organizing and the black artists and the black business owners who have important information on those hashtags, because when you go to the hashtag, all you see is everything blacked out. So we have to be very strategic, like in how we go about it. But I think it's definitely great that it brings awareness to the names and it brings awareness to the issues of what's at hand.
Speaking of social media, I know a lot of people have taken this time, like I said, to educate people.
Yeah.
And sometimes we're educating them in a very aggressive way. Mm-hmm. I've seen a lot of people outing people, just throwing their social medias and their emails out there, their addresses. But I feel like there's a proper way to educate people, especially people that genuinely want to understand why we're affected so strongly. Correct. Because I've even had conversations where people are like, even my best friend, she's not black, she's not brown, but she wants to understand, like, she's like, this is ridiculous, but why is this still happening? Like, what happened to lead up to this point? So what are ways that we can educate people, or some resources that we can give to non-black and non-brown people so that they can understand our frustration, but not feel like they're getting attacked for not doing something?
I think that's on them to ask the questions. As I made a tweet that had said, I'm not going to applaud a fish for swimming. And what I meant by that was, like, I'm not going to applaud someone or give brownie points for them, like, to not do the things that shouldn't have been done in the first place. But I do applaud them for asking the questions, and I do applaud them for standing up to folks that are in their community against racism. So I think when addressing folks who may be miseducated or ignorant to the fact, I think it's yes we should educate them on it, and based on the of their response, I feel like folks can't really control the built up anger that has been over 400 years of systemic racism in this country, of how the reaction will be to seeing ignorance. And I truly believe before even making a post, there should have already have been a level of information or seeking of information to not sound ignorant. And so that's just my stand on it.
And we both live in the DC area. So today is the primaries for the Democratic, at least.
Yeah.
I cannot recall the other states off the top of my head, but a lot of people are saying that voting is a part of the white supremacy and is a part of what brought us down in the first place. I personally don't agree with that. I feel like in order for us to be the change, we have to go and vote and hope that our vote matters and is going to be utilized in its full capacity. A lot of people are talking about the Democratic ballot. It has all of the people that have ever tried to be a part of the candidacy race right now. And I want you to explain it because you understand politics way better than me. So I do want people to understand why their names are on there and why we don't need them to split the Democratic vote right now.
Yeah, I mean, so to mention the states, like you said, it is voting time. So Indiana, Maryland, Montana, New Mexico, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, South Dakota, and Washington, D.C. are those areas that are voting right now. And I think it's very critical. There's power in the vote. There's power to have folks who look like you in office and in power. There's power to have folks not only who look like you and in power, but folks who align with your principles in power. to see change. And I, like I said, I think, like you said, I think it's a very important tool in the toolbox to use to see things. Like our thing that we say is from the streets to the suites. We take it from the streets. We protest, we demonstrate, but we also want to see reasonable legislation that's put into place that can help address the issues that we're out on the streets talking about. It's sad. I mean, it's sad to say, but in order to see that change happen, that we want to see, it happens through legislation. When we look at the allocation of funding for SNAP and the allocation of funding for housing, like all of that is allocated from elected officials. When we look at funding that goes to the police departments, all of that funding is allocated from elected officials. So it's very important for people to see the importance that a vote has. Just one vote can sway a whole piece of legislation, and so it's very important. And what was another part of your question? I'm sorry.
Yes, it was. A lot of people are saying that they've seen the names for the rest of the candidates who were previously in the race, and they want to vote for people like Bernie or Elizabeth, who aren't on the ticket anymore and want to split the Democratic vote. So I wanted you to explain it because I can't explain it the right way.
They still have the opportunity to vote for those folks who are on the ballot, but still. Those candidates have already removed themselves from the race. So even they're not really voting for them in the end. Unfortunately, we go by an electoral college system that should be abolished, and the people and the votes of the people should matter, not by electorates, but by the voice of the people. But yet we are here. And it goes by that. And so regardless, I mean, Joe Biden has the electoral votes for at the DNC. I mean, the votes at the DNC. And so really either way, it's sad to say whether you want it or not. Joe Biden will be the nominee for the president of the United States.
So you were speaking about electoral vote. I just want to make sure that when people listen to this episode, there's no confusion. Like, what is that? Oh, I've heard that before, but I don't know how to get that. But can you explain what the electoral vote is?
Like the Electoral College, it should be abolished, as I said before, and it should be by the voices of the people. But how we are in our democratic system is the fact that each state by population gets a certain amount of votes in the Electoral College. And so, for example, when you see states that are big like Texas and California, they will have more people, they will have more votes in the Electoral College than small states such as Delaware or Rhode Island.
Well, that does sound very unjust and not right. But
we see it in the 2016 election that Hillary Clinton won the popular vote. I mean, how do you have, I forget how many millions of more votes than the other person, and you still lose? It doesn't sound right. That's like saying, we take a poll on Instagram, but the fact that you like the other choice better than what the people polled on, it sounds very biased and not right. So, but that's just how I feel like that's why everyone
is so shocked about the outcome of it, because the overarching consensus of the people was to someone else, and here we are.
Right.
Since we are talking about 2016 and who resides in the White House as the current, how are ways that people can kind of help the situation, especially if you didn't vote for this person? Like, how can they still make a change even though their vote at that point wasn't utilized in their eyes? I don't think that's the right way, but
yeah, I mean, just depending on how they feel towards the occupant in office, or how they feel about voting in general. But I would say, like, if your candidate didn't make it, look into the other candidate, and if you align with their values and what they are proposing for this country, it's still an opportunity to reach out to the organizers. It's still an opportunity to reach out to the campaign and express your concerns. There's still organizations out there who have direct contact with these organizations. With these campaigns. There's folks who are in your community who are organizing for that particular candidate, and I suggest you like tell them what you want. I mean, after Bernie jumped out of the race, there were some things that he didn't agree with in the beginning, and aligns with Bernie Sanders. But after Bernie dropped out, Joe, in order to try to get some of Bernie's supporters, like he has to fall back on some things that he may not necessarily have won in the beginning. So you have to listen to the voice of the people, and I think that's what serving is. You serve at the will of the people, and so that's what I would encourage.
And if you were talking to either candidate, either one that you would want to speak with, what are some things that you would want to bring up as a citizen in America?
Yeah, so some of the main things, like I said, I am a policy advisor here in DC for one of the leading civil rights organizations. And of course, my concern is mainly on Black communities, Black and brown communities, marginalized communities. I push for legislation for police accountability. I push for more opportunities and funding when we look at historically Black colleges and universities. Of course, being a product, and both of us being a product of an HBCU, I look for increase in funding when we look at programs such as SNAP, and we look at programs where folks need those resources. I look at the importance of broadband adoption and internet. And we look at ourselves now. We all are quarantined at home, working from home, but most folks don't have the opportunity or even the access or the adoption to be able to even have internet. In 2020, and so those importance, like kids shouldn't have to drive to the local McDonald's to get Wi-Fi. They shouldn't have to ride around the neighborhood to get Wi-Fi. And most importantly, education. Like it shouldn't not depend on your area code for it to level the amount of education that you'll receive.
Exactly. You were speaking of organizations, and I do want to get into different organizations that can help, starting off with the organization that you are wearing a shirt of and that you are a proud representative of. So please give us the history on it and how we can support if there is a way, and how much this organization means to you.
Yeah, so National Action Network is one of the nation's leading civil rights organizations in the fight for equal opportunity and justice. As everyone may see, like we work very closely with families that are affected by police violence. We're very on the forefront of corporate accountability. We want to see diversity in these suites. And so organizations like that. And the reason I'm very proud of the organization that I'm with, because I see firsthand the legislation and the impact. When we look at, just for example, our partnership with Magic Johnson and making sure that PPP loans are given out to Black businesses, where before money wasn't even allocated from Congress to help Black businesses. So partnerships like that, and we see the work that we're actually doing to help our communities right now. Even in the midst of COVID, we on tomorrow we will have handed out 500,000 meals to people that affected by COVID. So I'm very proud of the work that we do. So organizations like that. So yeah, all of our legacy organizations, and even our grassroots organizations who are actually doing the work and involved in the community.
Well, shout out to y'all. That is a huge milestone, and thank you for helping as much as you can. I was shocked to hear that there was no funding being given for Black businesses, but at the same time, I'm not shocked.
Well, the same thing we saw from historically Black colleges and universities. I mean, they were giving tons and tons of money to these elite schools that they call them, but yet the funding was cut short when it came down to Black schools.
I don't know how else to say that our lives and our businesses matter more. Not saying that they matter more than the average person, but I know that it matters at least more than a property.
I mean, yeah, but even when we look like, it's so very frustrating when like you're here and you're actually like in the thick of it. And I mean, sometimes you just see what, you see on like headlines or what they're talking about. But when you're actually seeing that they're bailing out corporate businesses like Shake Shack, but yet there's a single mother who cannot pay her bill, her rent on the first of the month. Like, why are we bailing out corporate companies when rent is still due on the first of the month? And so those are like some of the problems that, we face. I mean, giving out a little stimulus check for somebody who has a mortgage does not, because the mortgage is still going to come. And regardless if they don't pay during those 3 months that they got a leeway on, they still have to pay those 3 months back. So you're still building on the backs of poor people. So, I mean, this is very, very frustrating.
It really is. And having to be around some of my coworkers and hearing their frustrations and trying to get people to understand that it's been an interesting time hearing people.
Yeah, people really show their true colors when things come out and you really see where folks stand. But it's always in the darkness when the monster comes out.
Write that down, everyone. He just said a gem. That was a word. All right, so we already talked about your organization, but are there any organizations that are on the top of your mind that people should be supporting and researching about and trying to support as much as they can?
Yeah, so I'm very, like I said, I work with a lot of legacy organizations, so I definitely want to plug in organizations like NAACP, of course, National Urban League, plug in organizations like Black Youth Vote and Black Civic Participation through Ms. Melanie Campbell, who runs that. When we look at even like grassroots local organizations, like get plugged in. When I think of organizations, who's someone that I can think about? I mean, like I said, I work with some of the same, like I said, legacy organizations every day, so that's always at the top of my mind. But I'm sure there's tons and tons and tons of organizations out there that you can support. Just go ahead and do your research, and they should come up.
And before we end this episode, are there any last words that you want to say to people in general? Just any last thoughts that you have, anything that your organization is promoting that people need to hear, and because this podcast is also worldwide, anything that the world globally should be aware of?
Yeah, so I would like to, like I said, repeat in the words of our sheroes and heroes who have paved the way before us, that I've said before, like, this is not a sprint, but it's a marathon. It's not a moment, but it's a movement. Time will really tell who is serious about it. And you will really tell who's like really joining the wave, just to be on the wave, rather than those who are riding it for real reasons. And folks it'll begin to pass out for those who are just posting a picture with their fists up to say no justice, no peace for likes and comments. But I joined the movement at a very young age. And I was dragged, like I said, into meetings and doing things like that when it wasn't cool. Not because it was fashionable, and while my friends were out doing what they wanted to do. But I repeat, after my big brothers and sisters who came before me, that for those who are serious, they will not get rolled over by all the smoke from the hashtags and the headlines. And after the headlines fade out and after the hashtags fade out, the movement will really tell who was really in it to be in it. And so I would encourage folks, even after folks in the streets are cleared, folks should still know your name. Folks should still know your face because you were that passionate about it. The work does not stop here. The work begins here. And that's what I would say. I mean, there were plenty nights from Eric Garner, when I think of Gwen Carr, his mother, that she felt alone, even though his name rung bells across the nation, because folks went back to their day-to-day jobs. And the name was like they didn't care about it anymore. And the real work happens after it all fades away. So I would encourage folks to just, stay engaged, and to stay in the faces of those who represent you. So that'd be my 2 cents.
Well, I appreciate you for coming on this episode and talking with us.
For having me. No justice, no peace, no racist police.
Yes, come on. Well, thank you so much. Give your social media handles so that they can stay up to date with everything that you and your organization are doing as of current.
Yeah, you can follow me at Tylik McMillan, TYLIK McMillan, MCMILLAN on all social media platforms. And that's Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. So check me out.
Yes, thank you so much.